sharp.
Yeah!
Across the many summits and ridges of the Tusas Mountains, north of the villages of El Rito and La Madera, the gradual processes of time have exposed clusters of weathered 1.7 billion year old rock that geologists call Ortega quartzite. This is a story about a group of friends and a wilderness of boulders in the high country of northern New Mexico. A story of discovery, adventure, and development. And some of the best bouldering you've never heard of, probably.
When you climb at the Ortegas, it's a sense of adventure every time. You're going up to a blank piece of rock and you're saying, how would you climb that thing? Because you can get that experience almost every time you go out.
Climbing is amazing, but I think even with more and more people becoming more and more adventurous and willing to put in more effort to get to good climbing, I think even with that, there's just something so inherently rugged about that area.
The access at Ortega West will significantly limit the crowds, I think. I mean, it'll be more, not as extreme as, Rocky Mountain National Park, but I think it'll be a similar type thing, right? I mean, because you do have to hike. It's a pain in the ass to drive in there.
When you talk about New Mexico climbing, people talk about the tower. Well, what do you like about it? It's pockets. It's very, very steep, and some of the rock climbing is tall. You can talk about Roy, it's sandstone, and there's features, there's roofs even. But when we talk about the quartzite, what we're talking about is this super bullet hard rock where the holds are kind of like meticulously placed throughout the route. So the problems, you walk up to something and you have to be creative about how to go from the bottom to the top.
It doesn't matter what you think.
We want to try to make it as accessible to everybody.
It's not this exclusive society of, well, I found it first and you're gonna have to go find it on your own.
Hold it.
It's something I've been trying since the very beginning, is not to be secretive about it. Like, to be very open and tell as many people as possible about the area as I can.
I was working at the Stone Age climbing gym throughout college down there, and stumbled into this crew of boulderers who were doing this spectacular thing, developing the Ortegas.
Yeah, come on, Trevor.
It's a climbing area I'd never heard of. And they allowed me to tag along, and on my first day out there, I discovered perfect rock and was able to work on first ascents that I thought were things of myth.
Every group of developers who's ever developed an area, and they're always going out every weekend, and it's usually a group that, if they weren't close at the beginning, they end up being close by the end of it.
Good job, Trevor. Nice.
Hopefully this will inspire people, because there's obviously just so much out there that is still left to be found, to be climbed in the American West. As seen with this group of people, the process itself is where the adventure is. And of course you get to open the doors for other people to come and play on the playground you built, and that's awesome. But really what you have to do is step out of your comfort zone. You have to travel beyond the pavement and then the crags, the barking dogs and crying babies, and go to an area, explore without knowing for certain that it's going to end up being what you hoped it would be. it'll end up being something, even if it's just a day getting lost and scratched by scrub oak and sunburnt, and then having beers afterwards with your friends. Not a bad day.
It's someone who likes to develop bouldering and develop new climbing and do new things. I mean, it's just a mother lode. It's the kind of thing you dream about finding.
Bullet blue rock, where if there's not a hold, you're not using that part of the rock. There's no friction, very little friction.
Did you find the rock needs a lot of cleaning?
No, very little. You get the occasional big chunk of rock that needs to be pried off because it'll kill you, but usually you just kind of blow the holes, dust off the holes, and climb it.
Scrub oak is a bane on climbers' existence in the Ortegas, and we pull no punches when we deal with it. It comes back with vigor.
Scrub oak sucks. It's like the herpes of the Ortegas.
Troop off the old block. You pull your butt off the ground, throw for the middle hold, match on it, and it's a pretty good slot. Set your feet up on pretty much nothing. You're standing on little spots of friction on the boulder, maybe a little divot. And then throwing for the finish hold at the lip of the boulder. Step up with my left foot as I'm pulling up and launching, and I touch the finish hold.
Woo! That was awesome!
The beta for a lot of the climbs I've found in the Ortegas is to be 6'1" and pushing 150 pounds.
Get it. Awesome. Come on. All the way. Nice. A little bit of pee just came out.
Homunculus. It's just like super fun, thin traversing. Every tiny little foot that you can find is important. And you get toe hooks in, you get heel hooks. Totally your typical Ortegas, super thin seams. Nice. For someone like me who is a little bit smaller than most of the other people I'm climbing with, like sinking one of those big moves like that is just glorious. Like I'll be happy for days. It's pretty cool.
Breathe. Come on. Send it. Come on, send that ring. Come on.
Ole, ole.
Oh yeah!
Mid 90s, you know, they used to call bouldering kind of the punk rock of climbing, and sport climbing was the glam metal. And it's not really true anymore. Yeah, I mean, the naming convention, vulgar names was always a little bit of it just because we're immature children, but some of it was also backlash against the climbing community who took themselves too seriously. It's become much more sterilized and family friendly, and it's not the same kind of dirtbag activity that it used to be. People are much more focused on performance, which has its good and its bad things. People are doing incredible things on rock right now, which would have been unimaginable 20 years ago. But it's also lost a little bit of of its soul.
Get off my lawn!
Coprofage is named after, well, my dog, because he found a big pile of human shit to feast on that day. It's easily 4 stars. It seems higher than it actually is because you're on a ledge when you're doing it, and there's no chance you're gonna actually miss the ledge and fall off. The ledge is huge. But it kind of feels like that when you're actually on the problem.
Yes.
Especially when you get up to the crux and you have to throw the heel hook and reach to kind of thin holds.
Come on.
Oh,
Yeah.
motherfucker.
Super good.
Woo! Adrenaline.
Get it.
I'm gonna switch this pad out for my pad.
Which one's yours, the pink one?
Bell of the Ball is awesome. It's super fun. I think it's pretty typical of the Ortegas, dynamic in places, but also delicate. The rock itself is really forgiving to your skin, which is awesome. You can climb there every day.
Completely bullet. You couldn't ask for better rock. I mean, it's so hard and so good. It's aesthetic as well. It's beautiful to climb on. The striped banded quartzite.
Have you ever climbed on quartzite? It was sandstone before it was cool.
It's a really peaceful place. There's a lot of beautiful nature just all around.
We're in the middle of nowhere, northern New Mexico, not minutes from I-25. And you'll be able to find solitude if you want to in the Ortegas.
So what's special to me about the Ortegas, it's the people that go there, but it's also the lack of people that go there. I love this. Fire in a hole is a great problem. You set up and you pull, and then you make this big shouldery move out behind you. And once you clench that, you realize that you're on one of the best slopers, or best sloper problems in the Ortegas. You work your way up this sloper traverse, you get this big explosive move to a lip, you bump, you hope you don't fall off, and then once you're on that, then you hit the edge and you're kind of making some delicate but fun moves off the top. It doesn't have that excitement factor of being 30 feet off the ground or whatever. You're not doing any highball moves, you're just doing hard moves. We just talked about Sanchez. On the Falcon, there's like a lot of cracks and creases and grooves and places where the water's worn. But you get on it, and it's a problem where you're kind of traversing out. But on this one, you get the excitement factor, and you make a big move to a bad hold that hurts your hand, and then you have to move past that and get pretty high off the ground. The rock is different as much as it could be from a lot of the Ortegas. It's water polished.
It just takes that little bit more effort to get to the Ortegas. Effort in a high clearance 4-wheel drive vehicle. It's no coincidence that we all drive Toyota 4Runners and Tundras and Tacomas.
Like the high country where all the good stuff is, you can't get there in a Sprinter van usually. Some of the best stuff we found is by following these roads which aren't quite on the map anymore. Bubonic is an example of that.
Fucking strenuous.
Oh, good
Is it
go.
good?
You start off kind of undercleaned, you move up to a good edge.
Yeah, come on.
Come on.
Come on, Jim.
Come on, get it.
And then you move up to this credit card hold. It's a crimp, and it seems improbable. that you can even use it for anything, but that is your main hold, and without that you couldn't do the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy. And what's nice is that all aspects of the boulder are steep and they're tall, and they all have problems.
Awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Come on, you fucking pansy.
That was awesome. That made that so much better. Oh, come on, you fucking pansy.
I need it.
Left hand hit to a kind of sloping a red, working our way up the red, and then throwing big, this beautiful smiley face to the left. Diamond in the rough. Pretty much the quintessential boulder for this area.
We talked about Kiowa Mountain, and that's the closest to Devil's Lake, and that's because you get really angular quartzite that you're doing a lot of compression moves on in talus fields where the boulders have kind of fallen over and created these little pits.
You look over your shoulder and there's just this expanse and you can see all the way to Colorado.
I think it's brilliant.
Those harder grades, V9 plus into the double digits, that type of development hasn't even started. Barely. It's barely started.
There's hard climbing out there like you wouldn't believe. I think it'll really shine above the V10, and beautiful problems too.
There's still another dozen ridges we haven't even hiked to, canyons that we can see have rock that we haven't made our way to.
Unclimbed boulders that we can go to for days.
Holy shit! I figured it's cheap climbing. Hips a little bit. Yeah, there you go. In time with your brush, for God's sake. You can't be out of sync. That's better. That was terrible. That thing is. You get, oh, good.